I keep getting the presence of Christ. Buddha's there too, but it's like they're working, these spiritual leaders are working as a team.
Do they have a message for us?
Many messages. A lot of information is here for you if you wish. I'm gonna go ahead and invite you guys. I'm not sure if they want to work together. They're interested in not provoking a bias for any particular religion. So if Christ would arrive, he just wants you guys to know that he's not the only spiritual power. It's just one that is present today. He asks, if he arrives, will you accept that he's just one power and not the only power? Is that okay?
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
good. Good one. Again, he wants you to know there are many different energies of love and power. Okay, Christ, you can, Oh, and I just need you guys to know he always arrives with me in the same way. Like, stop being so reverent, for goodness sakes. He always has the dice. It's like, let's just roll some dice for a while, Dave. Just let's have a little fun. Stop being so religious. um, don't need to put him on a pedestal. Source energy. Okay, yes. And he always arrives on a boat on the Danube River, where I used to live in Hungary.
Okay, Dave, blow some dice and take a roll.
Okay. I'm like a tabla rasa, and I am happy to see you here today. I really have arrived for a specific reason, and that is that I want you to feel the love and happiness, the sort of light of the universe as you live on Earth. It is going to be and is difficult for you to live here because of the emotional energies and shifts and changes that are occurring right now. It can it can cause you to lose sight of the beauty that is the universe, the love that brings you here today. We would ask that in your heart of hearts, for a moment, feel love without judgment. Feel that the universe is a place of light, and that whatever appears as darkness is only an aspect of the light. We would like to, and we say we because Christ is not one person. It is just an aspect that was embodied in a person on earth. That is, all of you have the same light that he showed. It all came from the same place. The light that you shine right now comes from the same place. It was just more embodied in one particular person whose mission was to state the light, to make it clear to all of you. We would ask you for a moment to keep love in mind. If it is helpful, think of a truly loving moment that all of you have experienced. Think of this and feel it in your heart as we move forward. This will help you to align with this particular form of light. Are there any questions?
Is there anything that we can do that's particular to sourcing your energy?
To source the energy? What do you mean by this?
Or contacting you and connecting with your specific energy?
Yes, you can. It is helpful if you do the work in your normal life to dispense as much as possible with too heavy of judgments. You will encounter people who are doing the wrong thing, who are not behaving in a loving fashion. But at the same time, you must not judge them. Understand what they do is wrong and what they do is not helpful to the love of the universe. This is an instruction for you only. It is not an instruction for them. Spend as much time as you can being open. That is, not in judgment, but in understanding of others. This will elevate your consciousness and prepare you for such events. If you would like to speak on this level, it is no problem. Simply ask. Your group is a very loving one, we would say, which is why this energy is available to you. Simply ask and we will be there. It is also the case that sometimes it is preferable to speak to other guides. They have the information that is closer to your heart and necessity at that particular time. Again, we want to let you know this energy is no better or worse than another energy per se. It is just the one that has arrived today because that is rather, we might say, at the back of your minds. You may not consciously speak to this energy today, but it is available whenever you wish. Just ask. And this goes for you as individuals too. If you would like to feel this light, some portion in your life at some time in the day, simply close your eyes and ask, and you will be feeling it. This is the true message of Christ. That is what and I'm saying I, but I mean we, wanted to tell you, is that you can always achieve this light simply by asking. It may be a momentary experience because some people will go to the mundane experiences, to the rage, to the feelings that they have during the day, and it may only be for a moment that they are able to achieve this. An example might be people who call themselves Christian but do not behave in a Christian manner whatsoever. One will look at their endeavors with skepticism. One will see that there is no light in their words. But it may be that at some point they experienced the light. They just could not explain it or understand it in a correct fashion. Just for a moment, they felt this kind of love. This is an illustration of how you must not judge others. You can look at their actions and state that they are wrong. You might even become angry at the way that they are behaving. However, it is best to avoid judgments. We will give Dave as an example. There were some lifetimes where he behaved in a terribly, let us call it, unchristian fashion, where he took advantage, where he was not kind to the Aboriginal people of Australia. This was a lifetime fairly recent in his aspect, and he has come back here to apologize in a way. This is not a good word, but to unravel, in a way, some of the work that he did before, which was not in the highest good. He is not a bad person in this lifetime. It was not a bad person that lived in that lifetime. It was a person who acted outside of the light. All of you, when you are going through your lives, will meet people who are extremely unpleasant, etc. Keep in mind that they might have been a beautiful soul in another lifetime. We say soul. Maybe the word is a beautiful reflection of the soul in another lifetime. Perhaps they were generous and kind and self-sacrificing. And in another lifetime, they will go through the process of being selfish so that they can understand the meaning. People who are able to separate the, let us call it, actions of a person, deeds of a person, from the actual soul that will ascend, will be assisted in moving towards this particular theme in the universe, which has a good deal to do with forgiveness and acceptance. No one is judged. It is you who judge yourselves when you get to the other side. Does this answer your question, my dear?
Yes. I have another question. This question is actually for Dave. He's very distressed about people's attitudes and opinions towards a friend of his. Can you explain that?
Yes, he appreciates you asking this question so concisely. It is typical of you, my friend, that you would do such a thing. It tells us a good deal about your own light, let us say that. This particular friend has a particular thing that she needs to work through in her life. One of the importances of noticing this particular person and what they are doing is that Dave and all of you have indeed gone through this sort of critique by others. That is, there are people who stood before tribunals thousands of years ago where they were destroyed, if you will, because there were people who were envious, suspicious, but also could not understand what was going on for a particular person. It is indeed envy, as the channel has spoken about before. It is a sort of identity. They placed their identity in a certain relationship with this particular person. And when they place that identity there, they feel that they should be in that space. They should be that person. It is they who should be asking the questions of Dave, for example. It is very much as you see it. But keep in mind, the subject of this problem also has something to learn in life. They should learn something a little bit like protection. They must also learn that it does not matter what other people say to some degree. They might also close their vessels a little bit. That is, they have a sort of tendency to ask others for confirmation of who they are. They must work through this process where they don't need such confirmation so much, where they can just move forward based on their own feelings and their own opinion. It is a particular test that this person has requested in this lifetime to help them be stronger in their own individual method, their own individual understanding, their own individual connection to spirit. It is just a little lesson that they must learn, along with a host of other lessons that they are learning and have chosen to learn in life. It is a good metaphor for all of you, because, for example, Dave has already done this. He has been the subject of discrimination, hatred, anger, some of it overt and some of it covert. He could tell you about the jobs that he lost merely because a manager was threatened by him, was threatened by his freedom, was threatened by his particular aspect of sexuality and the comfortableness that he felt with his own sexuality. All of these things are true, and they are not fair. It was not fair what they did to him. However, he is different now. He has gone through all of those processes, and it was also a way of telling him he should not have such a job. He needed to move on to better and greater work. And so he was put in a situation where he could not really become a corporate drone. We did not want him to do that, and he did not want to do that. So he misperceived what was going on and took it a bit personally. But it was really just a message. For example, and he will laugh at this later, It was a message to say, join the Peace Corps. Stop sitting around with these people and jockeying for corporate positions. It is not your personality. It is not what your desire is. There were other times where we pressured him. We tried to get him to leave the city where he lived in, and he refused. He continued to try to work out what was worked out in the city, and it was unpleasant. However, it was just a different choice, a different way of working things out. Does the choice matter? Well, he learned what he learned in the place that he learned it, and that is that. This person has learned what she has learned to some degree, and she is learning more. So, this is, and we are sorry for saying the name. We got carried away, but we are wanting to make the point for all of you that when difficulty shows up, it is not personal. It is merely a lesson, a thing for you to work through. You might think of it as an incomplete process from another lifetime that you wish to complete now. This is difficult for humans to accept. It is difficult for them to see the pain and suffering that they have experienced and justify that pain and suffering. It is difficult for them to hear that they chose some of the challenges because those challenges can be extraordinarily unpleasant. The difficulty, of course, is that people don't necessarily believe that there are other lifetimes. They don't necessarily believe that this is just a temporary experience on Earth, and they think that their lives were poor, that they were bad, that they had bad luck, that they had unpleasant experiences, rather than accept that those were experiences that they chose to learn from, not punishments, not like karma.
Wow, thank you.
Any questions you choose, now is the time. We are here for you.
How do you perceive, if it's okay, I ask, how do you perceive our group moving forward?
You may think of your planet as a sort of hive. That is, we might give you this metaphor, and we hope that it is not too negative, of a sort of ant hill. And on the ant hill, there are all of these actions and movements. Some of them appear more coordinated than others. Again, we don't mean to disrespect your consciousness. But if this is a metaphor, it will be a sort of society where things are working in a certain way. There is a queen, there are drones, etc. That is how it works on your planet. There are people who have roles. You have chosen to go beyond the anthill, as it were, to decide that you will not just live in these roles. These roles will be an aspect of your life, but that you will go far beyond such roles. Again, we don't mean to be disrespectful and to say that you are foolish ants or something. We mean only to say that in comparison to a consciousness, there is an anthill, and then there is that which goes far beyond the anthill. There is a consciousness that is greater, if you will, and we are having some difficulty explaining this in your terms. So imagine you may be 1 inch above the anthill. You may be 1 foot above the anthill in your consciousness. You may be 100 feet beyond the anthill. It is just a question of working through it. We perceive you as those who are rapidly moving beyond the consciousness of Earth, who are choosing something greater, something not controlled by the society or the others around you, but who are moving forward with your own understanding, confirmed by the understandings of those around you. You are able, as a sort of collective bubble, to move beyond, to go and float up in the air perhaps indefinitely, perhaps so far above your earth that it is beyond explanation. You have shown this as a capability, and each time we meet, you move a little closer and higher, not just in the consciousness of this moment, but in your normal days and effects.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Mm.
Does this group have a particular purpose?
Yes, it has a very specific purpose. It is something along the lines of what we have described. If you were to put this information out there to others, perhaps even what I've just explained, we have just explained, then you can see that it is very helpful. It will show others how to do exactly what you are doing. In a way, it is sort of like creating a pathway, building a road. This road that you have created is a road that others will take. They will be influenced by your work, just as people have been influenced by the work of Seth. It is a sort of new way of doing the same work that others have done before, in a way that is a bit less clinical, in a way that is a little bit more of a group amount of work. You were all destined to do this at some point. We use the word destiny very broadly. You were supposed to do this, perhaps in a way, and to meet all of the aspects of the group. And it does shift because different people show up for the group. All of those aspects combine in a sort of way to elevate the conversation to be something like it was now. There aren't people doing exactly what you are doing. That is, there are some using different methods, there are some with different personalities, etc. But what's important about your group in particular is that it is a reflection, a road upon which others may travel, just as those others who are doing different things might present a different road. It is important. Dave has mentioned a certain person online who is achieving certain goals in a certain way, but who has been to him unpleasant. However, that road is a road that is useful for some people. It is contained in a particular way that allows people to accept the knowledge. It is this way for a reason. Different humans will achieve understanding in different ways. They will be able to get to certain levels in certain ways. Abraham Hicks is an example too. Abraham Hicks brings certain people who are working in a certain, perhaps more tethered to the earth way, a little bit higher, so that once they get there, they can achieve another level, and then perhaps another level. Dave is a perfect example of this. He used to neglect the earthly world and think only of the spiritual world. This rendered him very frustrated in life because he often didn't have what he needed to survive, and surviving was very difficult. This was actually bringing him lower to the earth. So you can see the difficulty here. The understanding is important, that it is not just living in spirit, it is also dialoguing between spirit and the earth powers to come up with who you are, humanity. And that is an important distinction. Others will do it in a different way, just like there are different religions. Yours is a very specific, and we would say, lovely golden path. There is no need to compare yourself to others. You are charting a new way, a new territory, a new method to speak to spirit, and it will be useful. Even if they do not listen to the recording, the path is there, and it can be discovered by others even after you pass out of this physical body. Even if they have never heard your work, the path will be there.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Is there a way to enhance this path for others in our group?
And every time you do this work, you enhance the path. That is, every time you come together and make some slight changes, the path becomes better. Think of yourselves as explorers. You explore, you go into the, let us say, Antarctic, but you only go 20 feet one day. Then you come back. Then the next time you come back, you go 50 feet into the Antarctic. Then you go back and return to your normal powers. Each time you do this, you gain more knowledge, more understanding, and more practice, just as anything else. It is just a question of practicing. We do not have any particular suggestions about how you should do this, because each inflection, each method, even if you were to make a mistake, and you have not made any great mistakes, even they would be important for your awareness and understanding. What is really going on here is that you are learning to trust yourselves. Rather than think with the analytical, rational mind per se, you are beginning to trust, just to know as you work through it. Another useful enhancement is the conversations that you have before and after, so that you can take this knowledge, this information, this light, and put it into words, consciousness that you can understand on earth and share on earth and know on earth. We are very impressed with the work that you are doing. We are excited as we watch you doing this. Keep in mind, we are also learning. We are learning how humans can do this. We are watching and understanding better how to work with you. It is a two-way street. We learn, you learn, and that is a beautiful thing. The enhancements that you look for, well, we might suggest perhaps outside of the work, spending a little bit of time in happiness, spending more carefree time. This is especially true of Dave. He needs to go into nature more, and we tell him this often. However, he is a bit stubborn sometimes. So we will tell him now, go to nature, and we will say this to you. It is a bit easier for certain people to shirk off the troubles of the day. That is, Dave suffers a little bit from what Sheila suffers, too much empathy. He is worried. He worries about people on the earth. This is a little bit part of his nature, and we have to help him move beyond this. But all of you worry a little bit about this. It will be useful if you spend some time without considering, without thinking, just being your perfect selves wherever you are. Helpful to go to nature. This can be achieved through music. This can be achieved by looking at a flower. This can be achieved by sitting in meditation. You are not lacking in any of these things. But if you go here often, it will be helpful to the work. It will free you from the heaviness that sometimes occurs when you begin the work. It will open things a bit, and it will be easier on your heart and your consciousness. You need to, as much as possible, shift the weight of the world off of your empathetic bodies, because it can harm the process. Too much love, we might say, might get in the way a bit. This is why you brought up a certain reader. It is a sort of what you might call dysfunction. Does this make sense to you?
Yes, thank you so much.
You are very welcome. Any questions are welcome, and do not worry if they appear mundane. Often the mundane occurs to instruct you in a particular way. Anything is all right to ask.
Ren, do you have a question?
No, thank you.
May I ask, I know this sounds really selfish right now, but should I choose the path of enlightenment more so than the earthly stuff? Is that let me rephrase this. I'm trying to find a balance between earthly duties and spiritual growth. I am finding that I had started developing abilities, and I feel kind of like even with practice, it is not always a for sure thing. Like I'm not I trust that I am growing, but at a very slow rate. Is there any suggestions that you may have to help with this?
We would suggest at the beginning that you see yourself as we see you, as a beautiful being who is doing the difficult work of balancing lifetime processes with spiritual work. You, among all of you, must stop being so critical of yourself and the process. Accept it is a normal thing that you do laundry and that you do this work. It is what is required of you. You live within an earth of both energies. If we could take you back to the poor metaphor of the anthill, you must still fulfill a role on that anthill. You must still work and achieve certain goals and make money and take care of others. It's a challenge too for Dave. For example, he has to balance the demands of the relationship, which can change and shift and often puzzles him, if you will, in his relationship, and balance that also with the spiritual work that he's done. It is an example too to say that, let us say that Dave would have an argument just before a session. It would really distract him. It would be a problem. He might even resent the fact that he is having this argument a little bit. But the truth of the matter is, when Dave comes back to this work, he is learning how to quickly and efficiently register the energies where they belong. That is, if he has a 10 o'clock appointment at 9:50, he has no more time to fool around, if you will, to worry, to stress. He has to, and he has no choice but to shift the energy to ground what is unpleasant and to go to what is pleasant. This is useful in a host of ways, one of which it helps him in his relationships, but it is also useful for him to do this work. It will be useful for him in the future because let us say he is speaking before a group of people and something goes wrong just before channeling. He needs to know how to, on a minute, go to that work and stop worrying about something external. He needs to accept, and you need to accept, that it is natural that you have normal earthly problems which you must work through. But stop being so critical of yourself. We would laugh if anyone would say that you are not brilliantly working through this path. You have advanced incredible leaps. Remarkable leaps in our view. It is just that you have to come back to the mundane experiences of your life.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate your guidance.
We appreciate your hard work and doing the difficult balancing of life and spirit. This is part of all of your experiences on earth, the difficult balance. How can you recover from a sickness and come to this work? How can you accept that you live on an earth that has sicknesses? How could this be possible in a spiritual world? This is a balance, an understanding, a process of understanding where you come to accept, yes, sometimes I must do what my body requires me to do. I must rest. I must not do spiritual work today. And when it is appropriate, when things are clear, you do this light work. All people, all humans are there. Do not expect that my experience as Christ on earth was any different. Trust me that the stories that you hear about the marvels of such a human were greatly exaggerated, had many faults in life. I worked through them perhaps more quickly than another person, but I was not the same. I was not a human in the same way that others were humans. You might even think of me as being a sort of universal energy that came into a human body, but I was still affected. I still became angry and jealous. I still had relationship issues. Do not follow this ridiculous myth that I lived only as some kind of monk my whole life. I enjoyed drinking. I had a spouse with whom I argued sometimes. I had many of the human frailties that you experience, and there was an aspect of my energy that needed to work through these things that you call mundane for my own awareness and understanding. Spirit comes in the form of a human so that it can experience difficulty and faults, so that it can confront what is not fair, for example. I did work through these things, but it was not instantaneous. I was a child. I did cruel things as a child. I took advantage of my power sometimes. It did eventually come into my awareness that what I was doing was wrong, that I had more power than others, and with that power I had a responsibility. This is, again, not a totally human lifetime. It was different. It had greater power and aspects. But I had to answer moral questions. I had to decide for myself whether it was right to become a sort of king on earth with wealth and power and women, or whether I wanted to achieve something greater. Understand that without this huge question before me, I would not have evolved. I would not have become. Understand that there was a possibility that I could have gone in the wrong direction. Understand that Spirit has sent light to earth before, and that light has been corrupted, and is corrupted sometimes now.
Well, so on Earth, we're getting ready to recognize Easter, where on the third day you rose again. Did you actually rise, or did you live on in a human form? Does that make sense? I've read
Yes.
different stories and I'm not quite sure
Yes.
what exactly happened.
This is a very good question. What happened really was that I appeared to be dead. That is, you will sometimes hear stories of how a person, a body in the morgue, has been dead for some time and suddenly it breathes again. This is exactly what happened. We could describe this in a spiritual or a medical fashion, but this is just what happened. It was both medical and physical, but it was also spirit. It was also a sort of ruse, if you will. It needed to be this way. People needed to see a miracle. They needed to see what true love looked like, what dedication looked like. They needed to see this energy come to the planet, die, and be reborn. It is not the case that others should necessarily experience such a thing, but at that time on your earth, this was what was required. It was not enough just to do good. It was not enough just to be kind to the oppressed, to the lepers, to the widows, and all the others. That was not enough to impress those people. What impressed them was what they perceived to be as a miracle. And we can tell you, miracles like this often happened. When you gave birth, it was a miracle. It was a beautiful conjunction of spirit and your body, and it produced a child. That is a miracle, and these miracles occur all of the time, but they are not so obvious. A flower opens and it is a miracle, but you take it for granted because you've seen a flower open many, many times. You give birth and you think, it is just giving birth, because you've heard about birth and because you were born many, many times. But it is all a miracle. We could tell you many more details about this if you wish, because it was a sort of beautiful experience for us too. It is filled with wonder, even though we were there. It is still filled with wonder.
Um, I appreciate you went into detail, but I would also like to ask, will there be a time where you will rejoin the human collective, like the second coming of Christ?
This is an interesting question. We will not be exactly the same person, the exact same energy in a human body again. This is a sort of, let us just say, it is important to note the exact same aspect that is Christ will not be born again on earth because it is not helpful. However, Christ is always there. Similar energies or similar aspects of these energies will be born on earth. You can see now that there are children. Some of them are way, way, way more advanced than what you would think of as humans 1,000 years ago. They are ready to come to the earth and save it, to save it in the way that we saved it. That is not necessarily as a warrior, but as an agent of understanding. There are children now who reflect those aspects. You reflect those aspects too. So you might think of Christ as an energy that always exists, but it is through certain aspects of yourself or aspects of other humans that you will and are touching that spirit. Does this answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. The reason that I asked is because there's such disarray on Earth that
Yes.
I was wondering the how to best receive help from light energies. Does that make sense? Like it
Yes.
so you mentioned that children have been born to encourage this love and light.
Yes.
Um, is there anything else that we can hope or maybe expect in the next couple of years?
Understand that there is a misperception going on, that there is less light today than there was 10 years ago or 100 years ago. You can look at this, you can look at the history of the planet that you live on, and you can think of 1,000 years ago. Some on your planet lived in terrible darkness. They were full of dark and heavy agendas. They were unpleasant. We speak perhaps only of a certain place. Let us take Europe as an example. Terrible things were occurring. Horrific wars based on our teachings were being weighed against one another, against human beings. Enslavement, the most depraved and horrific things that can happen to a human. Look at your time now. There are many unpleasantries, but it is not as bad in most places. We'll just take Europe, for example. It is not as bad in Europe, not nearly as bad in the sense of the energies that were transpiring and floating around. It was not so good before. It is better now. The problem, of course, is that you have immediate material before you. That is, every moment of every action on earth is recorded before your eyes at the touch of a finger. This is driving all of you crazy. It is making you so upset that it is difficult sometimes to achieve the light. It also has a positive aspect. Because the darkness has been thrown at you, thrown before you, you have asked more questions. You are asking the question now because of the understanding, the awareness of negative forces on your earth. Again, these negative forces were worse in 1941 in Europe, for example, than they are now. Far, far worse. But you would not believe that if you turned on your television or watched anything on the internet, you would think that the earth was going to collapse and be destroyed at any moment. Every article of information that you receive is geared in that aspect. It is like my arising after I passed. It is meant to shock everyone, and the shock is meant to make people pay attention and make people pay money to certain people. This is very awkward, if you will, but it is important. It is time for all of the humans on Earth to say, no, I will not digest all of this negative information, and we speak to Dave that he must stop watching this stuff when he gets up in the morning. He must choose a time when he is willing to do this kind of understanding and go directly to the light before his breakfast. In your particular case, this is also true. Do not focus too much on the dark energies. Understand what they are. Accept that they are indeed darkness, and they indeed do need a response. Accept that your response will not be perfect. Just as you are paving a way towards the light and learn everything every day, you are learning everything every day in your own experiences. You may be full of rage when you see something, and that rage may be extremely important. If you recall, when I went to the temple and they were changing the money, I became absolutely outraged at the decadence that had overcome what you call a church. I was furious. There was some positive aspects to my fury. I sent a message to everyone. But if we were to do this again, we would not necessarily do it in the same way. It was sort of our media moment, if you will. It is difficult to express, but one of the things that you are doing is learning which energies to choose to focus on. It is important to act rightly. It is important to understand what is going on in your world. It is important to be informed in this way. And it is important so that you can lend your voice to support those who have no power or little power. It's very important. The challenge for you is to be able to do that without getting stuck in the aspect of an argument. This is a challenge. It is not going to be finished or completed tomorrow or any time in your life, but it will get better. You will become more able to speak to somebody with whom you disagree, treat them with some respect, and understand where they're coming from. At the same time, maintaining your disagreement. You will get better at this, and we do not believe that it is your job, as you approach everybody in your society, to have some kind of argument. It may simply not be in your interest to discuss some things with some people because that will bring you down to the level of argument. You might simply smile and understand. These people are going on their own trajectory. We might think of an example of a political leader who started major wars and brought unhappiness to many people. This was his journey. He too was given an aspect of light and made a choice. In this lifetime, he made the wrong choices based on all of the agendas that you were speaking of before the meeting, a sort of family desire to be good enough in the light of a father. This was his error. He could have done this differently. He could have had more intelligence, if you will, in approaching and self-awareness. But he did not possess that to a great extent, so he made an error. It is a grave error, which affected many people, which is why it upsets you so much. And you are not wrong to be upset. However, there will be many lifetimes for this particular president. He will again and again come back to the time of this question, and eventually he will be in the role of the leader, and he will choose the right thing. It may take 100 lives or 1,000. It may take only 2. It is up to his, how can we put this? Acceptance of the light, even though he is not in the light.
So, as a president that you are speaking, will he be running again?
We were speaking of a different president. We were speaking of Bush, not of Trump. It is difficult to say anything good about the latter character. It is difficult to find the light in him. Understand, however, in some sense, he is all of you. He was the child who has been terribly mistreated. The light was crushed from him. It was crushed by a man you might call a wicked person who cared only for his own self. And when that light was crushed, he perceived there was only one path, and that is to become the path of power. You might think of this character, this president, as Christ in the desert being tempted. He was easily tempted. There was no question in his mind which direction to go, because he is a particular aspect, a particular being that needed to experience things in a particular way. It may be useful to know that he is punished. He is in a sort of conundrum. In a way, he is still the 3-year-old child, begging for the acceptance of his parent and not receiving it. For some time, many people gave him the love that he wanted, the narcissistic love that he needed to maintain. 10 million people is not enough for him. Even they were not enough for him. Even still, he did not feel any aspect of the light, and he did not change. He will not change now. He is very unhappy, and he will be even less happy as the critics have their day.
So, do we call that karma?
Karma is a difficult word for us to understand and explain to you, because it is a human term, and it has more to do with punishment sometimes. Understand, when these religions were created, they were created on more than one level. There was a level of people who had little understanding and awareness, a set of rules that said, do not kill one another, it is not good. For some people, that is as far as they could go in consciousness. And for some people, they needed a parent to give them rules, so they would stop being unkind to one another, and they created certain rules. Understand, the rules have been perverted and misused. There was another commandment that they disregarded, because the information that came from spirit came through the personality of those people. And as you described here in the beginning before your session, those people had lack of awareness in certain places. So we want you to understand, however, that there was another aspect to those religions. There was a higher level of those religions. You can look at any religion and you can see there are rules for some that are useful and helpful, because they are confused, lost, if you will, and they will do better if they have guidance. And then there is an opening, an aspect where, though the book is not correctly written entirely, people can look at the book and they can see a ray of light, and for a moment, they get closer to the truth. Karma, it is not a perfect term, but it was a useful term for some of the people living in Asia at that time, to help them be guided better in how to treat one another. That is, if they were unkind to another, they would have to go through a lifetime where someone was unkind to them, perhaps, so that they could understand it better. It is better to understand it in the way of experience. So, before your lifetime, you chose certain experiences that you wanted to have for your advancement, but the choices were yours. You could have chosen not to talk to the V group. You could have chosen to be selfish that day. You could have chosen to spend all day drinking alcohol, but you did not choose that. That is the aspect of humanness, the choosing. The events that happen to your life are not your fault. They are not exactly karma. They are not perfectly stated when they say you planned them. It is sort of like you get together with your tutor, and your tutor tells you, you should study mathematics a little bit more. You should focus on this now. You will not pass, you will not graduate if you don't work on arithmetic. So in this lifetime, you must do arithmetic. It will be better for you. And you agree. You may disagree and say, no, I don't want to do arithmetic. I want to be born as a flower for a couple of thousand generations. But you will eventually get bored as the flower. You will eventually not wish to be perfect anymore. You will want to come to life perhaps as an unpleasant person, so you can experience life as an unpleasant person. It does not mean that that unpleasant person cannot grow. It does not mean that that person cannot make better choices. It does not mean that that person cannot learn. You will sometimes see people in the world who have been through this process. At some point, they understood. At some point, they changed the direction of their lives. They realized that what they were doing was not in the light, and they chose the light. This is very important for you to understand. It is this choosing that makes you a human. It is this choosing that brings you forward into the light. It is a sort of job, if you will, sometimes with unpleasant aspects, but it is also a beautiful and joyous experience of you sometimes putting the self that wants things aside for something greater. In some sense, we would like to spin what you say and put it in a positive way. There are not negative aspects so much as there are people who are choosing to go beyond the negative aspects. You might think of yourself when you were a child. We will give Dave as an example. He was 5, playing a game of cards with his 3-year-old brother. One day he realized he could cheat, he could trick the brother, he could win every single game. But he was sitting in the lawn in front of his house when he realized this was wrong. It was wrong to cheat. It was not in the light to cheat, and it was not fun to cheat. And he chose not to do that again. He has never cheated, for the most part, since, because he learned that lesson at that time.
Well said. Thank you. Oh my
You're
goodness, that was so much information.
I have one last question and then we can wrap it up. So we've been at this over an hour. This question I'm asking for Penny. And I'm asking why her father or her adopted father is lingering.
Why has he not passed?
Yes. He has a feeling that he must complete something. He has a feeling that he hasn't understood everything. He is half in, half out, if you will, but still stubbornly trying to complete a sort of awareness. This is not necessarily a bad thing. It is just a sort of adjusting time. he has had some difficulty accepting the mistakes that he made in his life and moving on. He is a little bit afraid. That is, he's afraid to face the mistakes that he's made in a lifetime and accept that humans make mistakes. He is lingering to try to undo some of the mistakes that he made. There are some positive aspects of this. He also does not necessarily wish to leave everyone alone. There is a bit of a fatherness in what goes on, that he must be present to make sure that others are okay. This is a small aspect of what's going on. Most of it is his reticence to move on from a lifetime where he's not certain that he completed all of his tasks. The truth is, he will come back to Earth and he will learn these lessons in a slightly different way when he learns it, and it is of no consequence. It does not matter whether you learn something over one life or over 1,000 lives. It is all as it should be. But he is unaware of this. If you wish to make his passing a little bit easier, it will be useful for you to whisper into his ear, "There is nothing more you need to do. It is your choice, but when you choose to move on, we will hold you in the light." Just say this in his ear. It might not be that he recognizes the sounds. It might be that he only hears this. Your permission, if you will, your allowance, your stating that it is okay if he moves on. It may be all that he needs to complete this lifetime.
I've already let him know that everybody will be okay if he decides to or chooses to leave now. Unfortunately, I have not been able to pinpoint why he was choosing to stay, so I appreciate your
He is stubborn. It may be that he needs to hear this more than once, for he is stubborn. This is one aspect of his personality that he needs to learn about, and that he will learn about in another lifetime, not to be quite so stubborn and to accept the light. He's a little bit afraid. He's afraid the light is not really there, or that it encompasses a good deal of punishment. This is just a fear that he has. There is no more that you need to do. You have done what is necessary, and that is all. The rest is up to him. Be patient. Allow him to make the choice in his own time. Understand that there are many aspects of love that surround this decision of yours and surround you. There are many aspects that surround him. This is a process, and the process must be one of acceptance on everyone's part. You have shown him the love that he needed to see. It's just a question of him reconciling all of these aspects. You have done exactly what is needed. Do not criticize yourself. That will be an aspect similar to your father's stubbornness, which you must work on in this lifetime. You are perfect as you are. There is nothing you need to change. You are just learning. You are becoming every day. If you could see yourself from our perspective, you would be absolutely amazed at the shining light that rapidly is achieved every single day, even while you are doing mundane things. It shines through the universe. Do not spend too much time criticizing or worrying about yourself. You are proceeding apace We are impressed because what you do is full of love.
Wow. Thank you, Sue, for asking. And thank you so much, Dave and Christ, for answering that in the most humble, amazing, kind way. Thank you.
It's our absolute pleasure to work with you. We would ask as you close out this meeting that you feel the love, that you feel the universe coming to you because you have come to us in this beautiful process you call channeling. We would ask that you be aware of the marvelous work that you are doing. It is not ego-based to accept that you are doing great work. It is an understanding. Feel the love that we feel for you, and that extends throughout all of the universe, to which we all return. We will say goodbye in all of the love as we end this transmission.
Thank you. Thank you. Much love. Yes.